Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. So as you guys can see in front of you, this is the full review of the brand new release by Sugess and Seestern. These are the models S431 for the Sugess and S436 for the Seestern. Now hopefully you guys saw the unboxing video which was done a week and some time ago, and I went through all the specifications and dimensions. So for this video I'm just going to put them up on screen, but to summarize, you've got your standard specifications: sapphire, steel. These watches come with a Seiko NH34 GMT movement. Now one of the things which I said in the unboxing that time and time again, as the months go on, as the years roll on, brands on AliExpress are just constantly pushing the barrier to give us even more value for money. And it does spoil us. It gives us quite unrealistic expectations for a lot of other watches, because there's a lot of things involved which we don't consider. For example, micro brands and your corporate brands or your mainstream brands, they have a lot of overheads, staff fees, QC, which you have to pay for, etc. So a lot of the cost is within that. However, with these sellers on AliExpress, a lot of the times it's a very small team, and of course you've got cheap labor. You've also got cheap cost of manufacturing depending on the pieces you produce, so it does allow them to give us a hell of a lot for the money. Now with these two watches, on first impressions, they were absolutely stunning. The finishing on these watches is of a very high class, and we look at Seestern as a brand, or Sugess, in the last, that's a year or so, and ever since Seestern came out, they are continuously improving, continuously getting better. And this is the homage game, guys. So a lot of the models are definitely not original; they're all homages. But the level of execution is very impressive. Now, one of the things I will mention towards the end of the review, had these stack up against St. Martin's, because St. Martin is probably the market leader on AliExpress in terms of quality and finishing that you get. So I'll make a point of that towards the end of the video. But right now, let's have a closer look at both watches. Now, they are exactly the same as I mentioned in the unboxing. The case is exactly the same, the bezel exactly the same. The only difference is, of course, what you see on the A-face is that dial setup. So I'll go through the dial setup, the differences on both dials for the Sugess and the Seestern. But before that, we will cover the similarities. So let's start off with the finishing. That is by far one of the things which definitely does stand out above all else. So we start off on the bezel, and you'll find the brushing is a sunray style brushing, which means the grain of the brushing spreads outwards around the circumference of that bezel. And that's a really nice touch. Considering the watch is fully brushed, it really helps distinguish that bezel by letting that light sort of flow over the bezel in a different way in comparison to the rest of the case. Moving over to the lugs, you'll find that straight linear brushing, also matched on the end links. So again, a different kind of transition between all those surfaces and the way they've been brushed. The brushing is super fine. The bezel is slightly different. The bezel has more hairline, but in comparison to the lugs and also the side of the case, this is very fine, almost satinized brushing. They've also incorporated this lovely feature where you've got this polished edge, so a beveled edge around the case gives it a really nice highlight. Does break up that fully kind of brushed case. With just adding that little slither of polishing around the edges, it definitely does make a huge difference. After all, with watches, it is all about the smaller details. The bracelet itself is, again, exceptional. It's a great effort from Seestern and Sugess. You have female end links, which makes the watch extremely compact. With the 48mm lug to lug, the end links are kind of subset between those lugs, so it does shorten that a bit. Great articulation on wrist. The fit is, it makes the fit much better, because with all these style of cases, these Tudor-esque and Rolex style cases, they're very flat at the bottom. And I don't find them very comfortable at all, and that's probably due to my wrist size, 6.5 inches. There's not a lot of width on there, so therefore these bracelets and female end links do definitely make a huge difference. The bracelet is fully brushed. You've got screw-in links, polished sides on that bracelet. The clasp is slightly different to what we've seen from Seestern's previous clasps and Sugess' previous clasps. It's a full shell. It's been beveled, polished, brushed in the center. The Seestern is actually sterile. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Maybe you'd like a logo, and I know the Sugess one does actually have the Sugess logo. However, they've added the newest feature on there. So if we open that clasp, you'll see a on-the-fly adjustment. And if you think about all these little features that you're getting with the NH35, the price is extremely competitive. You do get a lot of value for money. So if we just slide that up, it's just a ratchet clasp, so it allows it to extend, giving you this on-the-fly adjustment capability, which is very important. In the summer, especially with all the temperatures fluctuating, being a steel watch, sometimes you just need a bit of room to breathe. Case is sterile, normal, brushed screw down style case back, and the crown threading is for me anyway. I've noticed with Seestern watches and Sugess watches, if they have a screw down crown, it is exceptionally smooth. So they've got very high quality machining on there. And anybody who has a Seestern, so if you go back to the Doxa homage, etc., that was something you definitely felt over all the rest. I mean, we screw it down and you can't even feel the threads catching. Is just super smooth. So I really like how that's finished. Again, it adds that little touch of quality to the piece. Again, going back to those little things. Now, this is traditionally known as the Steve McQueen homage. However, one learned or educated subscriber in the comment section did educate me that that's kind of incorrect. Steve McQueen apparently did not wear this. However, it was a bit of tricky marketing as they did, and it was in fact a very famous mountaineer that actually wore this. And we do get that, right? You get nicknames from all sorts of different methods, but till to date, this is what it's actually known as, this particular design. Now, with regards to the dial setup, it's a very simple dial. It is fully printed. There are no applied features on this. You've got contrasting colors. You've got the old radium style lume or coloration for the hour markers. And in between on that minute track, you've also got this black and white contrast going on. So white printed text, kind of blocky squared text, which it matches the overall aesthetic. I've got no issue with that. Of course, the water resistance rating just above the 6. And then you've got these candlestick style hands. Again, paying attention to the contrast. Black in the center, white on the outsides with the old radium lume in the center. If you look at the seconds hand, you'll find the pip is more towards the center. Usually you find the pips towards the end of the seconds hands, but that's okay. It looks absolutely fine. Looking at the length of those hands, great length. They've absolutely nailed it. Seconds hand is hitting towards the edge of that minute track, and so is that minute hand. So then you also find a nice splash of orange on that GMT hand. Good length, and it's slightly larger, just to make it that much more visible. So I think in terms of the dial setup, they have thought about it really well. Legibility is there, the contrast is nice, printing is very good and clean. It is a matte effect dial, however, it's not grayed out. So there's a bit more black in there, so it gives it a very nice dark look, which sits really well against the colors that you see on that dial. Seestern do stand alone next to San Martin, because San Martin don't have this color option yet, or this design. So it's really interesting. If you really like this, it's worth definitely getting. So when we look at the Sugess S431, you'll find it does look slightly different in terms of the dial setup. You also have 3 colors offered. The dial setup on this does have more applied features. So the maxi style hour markers are fully applied. You've also got this white frame around there rather than a polished frame, which we usually see. You've got printed script text just below the 12 for Sugess's brand name, and just above the 6 you've got some more printed text. And I like the way that text is actually been laid out. It's quite proportionate. It doesn't look overpowering against the dial. Also, the font style chosen is quite nice. It doesn't look very basic. It looks like a decent style font. You've got a touch of yellow just below the GMT text on the water resistance rating, and then you've got some orange on the seconds hand, so that accented contrasting colors is also present on this. The handset are your traditional snowflake style hands. They've also got these white markings, and I don't know if you can see this on camera, but the center of those hands is actually dark blue to match the dial. So between both Sugess and Seestern, you do have a fair few options depending on the dial and the handset style. I do like this deep blue, almost black in certain light conditions. And the only thing I'd say is that seconds hand and the minute hand are just a touch too short, but anytime I've seen these style of hands, you always find that the seconds hand doesn't always extend towards the edge, which is not a problem, but it's just nice to see just slightly longer hands. But the GMT hand has full length all the way towards the edge of that minute track. And again, same thing with the Seestern, very clean printing, great application on the hour markers, good nice contrasting colors. So I think the white trim around the hour markers and the handset do complement the dial. So I guess the only thing remaining is preference. If you prefer the scripted text from Sugess, or if you prefer the blockier text from Seestern, or if you prefer the logo from San Martin, because all 3 watches are exactly the same. The finishing from the Sugess Seestern versus the San Martin, I don't see any difference, or I don't recall any difference. The only thing I can see is I remember when San Martin first brought out their models, I'm sure the hour markers were printed. Now they've gone for applied hour markers with polished frames. So that's a slight difference to the Sugess and Seestern. And both these are actually a bit cheaper than the San Martin for the equivalent NH34. I think San Martin does it at £230, which is around $260 maybe. And Sugess and Seestern, they're both a bit cheaper, just under £200 or around $240. So based on your subjective requirements and your preferences, you can choose either model. So let me give you guys a Lume shot on both watches and let's see what we're working with. Regarding the Lume on the Seestern, due to that old radium style Lume and due to not having that many layers on the actual dial, it's not as bright as you'd probably like or hope. It still is present, it's perfectly legible, it has been applied perfectly, no patchiness at all, but it doesn't give you that punchy light that you probably want to see. That old radium style does come with that drawback. You have to apply loads of excessive layers to get really bright Lume from there, and you'll find that across the board with whoever uses this type of Lume. Now, when we move over to the Sugess, it's a lot brighter, a lot punchier, very bright. It's BG none, of course, and with the application of those hour markers, you can put in quite a lot of Lume. There's a perfect Lume match between the handset and the hour markers. There's no difference between them, so equal strengths, equal layers, etc. And the Sugess definitely pops through. So good quality Lume on the Sugess. Seestern, it's one of the characteristics of this old radium style Lume, but it still is visible and present, although it could be quite a bit brighter. Here's the Seestern S436 on my 6.5 inch wrist, and as I stated, those human end links on that bracelet really do help this case sit well on wrist. I mean, it's a very flat case, so the edges don't really sit on this wrist, but that bracelet, the way it wraps around, does a good job of holding it. Dimensionally, is spot on. 48mm lug to lug, 40mm at the bezel with a 39mm case profile. Yeah, and great legibility, as I said. Looks good on wrist, fits really well, very comfortable. The bracelet is awesome. And I don't know if I'm making this up, but it seems to me the bracelet on the Seestern and the Sugess just slightly better finished than the San Martin. I don't feel that same level of edginess, but as I said, I could be making it up. It's probably something in my mind. That is quite subjective, so don't really take that as rock solid from me. And the on-the-fly adjustment really makes it quite easy to adjust it as and when you want. Now, a point to mention on the bracelet is the actual total length. Now, usually when I size my bracelets, with the normal size links, I remove 2 links from each side, or sometimes 3 and 2, depending on the length. But this one, I've only removed 2 pieces, so the bracelet isn't as long as you'd like. I mean, there's only 3 links which are removable. So I estimate the maximum wrist size that this watch will fit, or the bracelet will fit, to be around 7.5 inches or 7.5 3/4 maybe, and that's including the on-the-fly adjustment. And I don't think it will fit wrist size up to 8 inches. And that was a specific kind of question from one of you subscribers. Is that the case? So yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think the bracelet is long enough. And it's something that they need to address. I think more brands need to offer extra links, especially if they know the bracelet has a capacity of only around 8 inches. I think bracelets should go up to like maybe 8.5, 9 inches, because some big guys out there, and it just makes it a more inclusive watch as well, rather than let anybody down. Now, with regards to the Sugess, let's quickly put that on wrist. And in terms of wearability, you can find the exact same thing as it was on the Seestern, but just in terms of looks, I'm happy with the aesthetics. I like the way they've done the dial, the application, the way they've kind of done the text as well, the proportions. It is very proportionate. Nothing seems kind of odd or out of place. The execution, as I mentioned at the start of the video, is phenomenal from Seestern and Sugess. We can definitely see them pushing in the right direction. And as I said in the unboxing also, it's a point worth considering that San Martin should get some credit for this, because as the market leader, they are leading the way for so many brands, and you can see a lot of brands headed in that direction, just chasing San Martin, getting very, very close to them. And with regards to these 2 watches, I think that they're next to San Martin without a shadow of a doubt. And these 2 are just slightly cheaper as well, which is a bonus. Now, I think one thing I didn't mention is the crown signage. I mean, it's just a plain or less. I'm not a fan of that style of S on the crown. I would prefer a scripted S, but Seestern seemed to have dropped that starfish logo they had going on. Maybe there was too much negativity about the starfish, but I think they should have stuck with it, because again, it is part of your identity. You shouldn't keep changing things like that around, in my opinion, in order for you to be taken seriously. So that's my 2 pence on the Sugess and the Seestern. Do I recommend them? Hell yes. There's a few preference matters to think about, in terms of logos and design that you like. But in terms of build quality, exceptional. They've done really well, and I'm really looking forward to what they have coming up. Now, just a note on the Pelagos that has been delayed. I think it's been delayed towards the end of May or mid-May, due to some bracelet issues. So we just have to be patient and wait for that Seestern to come out. So that's it for me today, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always, and I hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon.